There is more coming out of Hangzhou. CCTV's Mike Walters is standing by for us in the city of Hangzhou. Mike, the summit is just a week away and some key decisions are due to be made there. What are the expectations, particularly of African countries?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. I think the expectations are very high here. Xinhua recently talked to a researcher who studies this sort of thing at the University of South Africa, posed the question to him, and he says he believes that a lot of the burning issues affecting the continent are also the issues really that these G20 leaders are also wanting to address. Slow economic growth, that's something that's obviously happening on the continent, but it's also it's a global slowdown. And so these leaders want to address that. Another key issue, as you know, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, key problems on the continent, terrorism. But the G20 leaders also concerned about terrorism. So those are some of the issues that they hope they will address. Obviously, there'll be issues that they will be discussing. Now, let's talk a little bit more about Hangzhou. With a history that dates back more than 2,000 years, Hangzhou is one of China's 7 ancient capitals. Today, it serves as Zhejiang Province's economic and cultural center. The city also has a reputation of being paradise on earth. Here's a closer look at Hangzhou. This year's G20 summit will be held in the city of Hangzhou in East China, located southwest of Shanghai. It's about a 2-hour drive by car. Hangzhou is a major economic hub in the Yangtze River Delta region. Its GDP surpassed 1 trillion yuan in 2015. That's about 150 billion US dollars. For years, the city has been recognized by the World Bank for having China's best investment environment. Alibaba, China's largest e-commerce company, is headquartered in the city. More than 9 million people live in Hangzhou, the equivalent of the population of Sweden. Hangzhou is one of China's 7 ancient capitals. There are numerous historical and cultural heritage sites, along with countless natural scenic spots for visitors to enjoy. The city is renowned by Chinese people and considered as paradise on earth. Marco Polo described it as the most magnificent and noble city in the world. Hangzhou's tea culture is second to none, with hundreds of tea houses scattered across the city. The most popular tea in Hangzhou is Longjing, noted for its deep green color and invigorating fragrance. U.S. President Barack Obama also will attend the G20 summit in Hangzhou, one of his last major international trips before his presidency comes to an end in January. Our reporter, Roy Ruttenberg, tells us about the expectations for this trip.
Well, the White House publicly confirmed President Barack Obama's attendance at the G20 summit less than 2 weeks ago, while an Obama spokesperson said on Friday there's still no word on the president's final schedule in China. Administration officials have repeatedly stressed the importance of the trip and their hopes that it will be a successful one. Obama is expected to take part in the Leaders Summit in Hangzhou, and he'll also hold high-level bilateral talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping. This will be among Obama's final appearances on the international stage as U.S. president. His second term ends in January. His administration is said to be keen to tie up a few loose ends. Sources say Washington and Beijing could each ratify the landmark COP21 climate deal reached in Paris last December. They may do so even before the G20 begins, laying the groundwork for substantial clean energy talks at the Hangzhou summit. Washington is expected to call on other countries to ratify the deal to help ensure the treaty goes into force, perhaps before Obama leaves the White House. China is expected to focus on global economic recovery. Obama will likely try to highlight economic growth since he took office. The White House says Obama will, quote, underscore the importance of G20 cooperation in promoting a level playing field and broad-based economic opportunity. Obama took office back in 2009. This will be his 11th trip to the region as U.S. president, as part of his administration's rebalance, or so-called pivot, to Asia. It's a policy that has often put Washington at odds with Beijing. At the last U.S.-China talks in Beijing in June, the two sides clashed on a handful of friction points, including the South China Sea and the deployment of U.S. anti-ballistic missiles in South Korea. These issues are likely to come up again when Presidents Obama and Xi meet. Along with President Xi, Obama has stressed how the world's 2 biggest economies have worked together on climate change and nuclear security. White House officials suggest Obama will want his final trip to China as president to end on a positive note. Roy Ruttenberg, CCTV in Washington.
Africa's top economies will be closely watching the G20 summit. Nigeria has embarked on an economic diversification program designed to raise revenue from non-oil sectors. The latest figures from the country's Economic Policy and Research Center show growth has slowed from 7% to 4% this year. CCTV's Sophia Odenga reports.
Nigeria's economy is weaning itself off an overdependence on oil revenue. Analysts say the importance of repositioning the economy can't be overemphasized.
We need to see more action on the diversification of the economy by bringing more attention on the players on the export scene and then focusing on non-oil products.
To make the country less vulnerable to oil price shocks, Nigeria is focusing on the trade and domestic manufacturing of non-energy goods.
Industry has been on negative for 6 quarters. 6 quarters, there's been complete meltdown on the industrial sector. So that's why we're saying that there has to be a resurgence of support to that sector. And that has to come from import substitution strategy and backward integration strategy. Not only to stem the tide of the import of about extra $2.6 billion a month, but also to encourage the likes of China and India to understand that they have more business to do with the biggest economy in Africa by investing in the export-free zones.
We asked some Nigerians whether or not the diversification strategy is likely to change their lives.
We have a monolithic economy in Nigeria and so many other countries in the sub-Sahara with emphasis on petrodollar income. And no country can survive without industrialization.
It's not really easy for them to put food on the table of every Nigerian. But if they look into the agricultural sector, the manufacturing sector, and especially the power sector, the problem we are facing now will, to a larger extent, will be addressed.
Nigeria plans to double its agricultural output over the next 15 years, and in so doing, create more jobs. But in the short term, locals are hoping the country will survive the tough economic climate. Sophia Dengo, CCTV, Abuja, Nigeria.
So obviously there'll be a lot of eyes looking here on Hangzhou from around the world, hoping that the G20 summit can produce some key results. We'll be here before, during, and after to bring you the most comprehensive coverage of the G20 summit. Beatrice?
Thanks for that, Mike. And we still have plenty of news coming out of Hangzhou for you. And of course, Africa as well will be closely watching the proceedings at the G20.